Hello, my name is Hermoine Hamlin. I am a foster care and adoption supervisor with the Newport News Department of Human Services in Newport News, Virginia. Today, I'll be talking about managing adoptive, resource, and foster parent expectations, MARFPE coaching model, engaging Newport News DHS parents in trauma-informed conversations on managing unrealistic expectations. A little about me. I've worked with the Newport News Department of Human Services for a little over 6 years as an adoption and foster care supervisor. Before moving back to the Hampton Roads area of Virginia in 2017, I worked for the Department of Children and Families in Leominster, Massachusetts as an ongoing social worker supervisor. During my time at DCF, I completed the clinical certificate program in the relational and multi-contextual treatment of trauma at Simmons College in Boston, Massachusetts. During my career, I've served in various community-based mental health roles, such as being a licensed professional counselor in private practice in Southeast DC, intensive care coordinator, disability and mental health services coordinator, etc. And a fun fact about me is I'm a living kidney donor. I donated a kidney on behalf of my mother on June 26, 2007 in a kidney swap program. She received a kidney on December 15, 2007 after being on dialysis for over 3 years. Now, why the topic of managing expectations? As far as I'm concerned, all roads lead back to trauma. Permanency staff and adoptive, resource, and foster parents loosely use the word trauma, but struggle with grasping the real-time impact of trauma on placement stability. When discussing reasons for adoption dissolution, the theme of unrealistic expectations kept coming up. In multiple conversations with staff, we discussed why placements were crumbling. I'd hear things like, the parent is struggling with the child's acting out, and they think that the child can do better. Or the parent doesn't think it's a good fit because the child isn't insert behavior here. I became deeply concerned with children re-entering foster care after adoption, presenting with the same concerns that existed before being adopted. Now, before I get into adoption dissolution numbers in the state of Virginia, I wanted to provide a little information to establish the disproportionality in our city and the state. The population breakdown in Newport News is about 45.5% white, 41% Black, 7.2% multi-race, and 9.6% Hispanic. However, for foster care in Newport News, the breakdown looks a little like this. 71.8% of children in foster care are Black, 16.5% are white, 7.2% are multi-race, and 9.6% are Hispanic. Now, I knew that there was some disproportionality in the city, but Black children being represented in such a way was really shocking to me. Additionally, compared to the entire state of Virginia, Newport News is more disproportional than the US, with Newport News being about 50% higher, and the rest of the state, with Newport News being about 40% higher. Now, in regard to Virginia adoption dissolutions, data from 2021 and 2022 showed varying reasons for adoption dissolution, with child's behavioral needs and family expectations not being met being the most prominent reasons for adoption dissolutions occurring in 2022. Out of 145 total adoption dissolutions in 2022, 62 were domestic no TPR, 42 were domestic TPR. But of the 62 domestic no TPR dissolutions, 57% were due to family expectations not being met. And of the 42 domestic TPR dissolutions, 57% were due to family expectations not being met. Now, as we talk about managing expectations, it's important to note that Our adoptive resource and foster parents receive training in the city of Newport News. We do PRIDE training as part of their certification process. But there is no in-depth discussion regarding factors that significantly contribute to placement discontinuity or how to mitigate these factors. Additionally, permanency staff receive various trainings throughout the year, but none of them provide in-depth information on factors associated with placement discontinuity. Finally, permanency staff have not received training on how to navigate conversations about placement discontinuity and managing expectations. Now, my research question or my PICO. If staff receive training on what is involved in helping potential adoptive parents manage expectations for children who have experienced the child welfare system, and as a part of that training, learn to utilize a coaching model to use with families, will it result in improved parents' perceptions of what it takes to be a more stabilized family? Let's take a look at what the research says. Adoption placement stability can be impacted by the educational attainment level of the adoptive mother, and higher educational levels are associated with more disruptions or disillusions when compared to mothers with modest academic achievements. However, later research suggests that the adoptive mother's education is just a proxy for heightened expectations regarding the adopted child. And it's the adoptive parents' expectations that are associated with placement instability, not necessarily higher educational levels. Some research talks about parental expectations emerging as a significant indicator with the greatest influence on adoptive or adoption outcomes. As adoptive parents wait for their adoptive child to join the family, they idealize their child and the adoption experience, which leads to unmet or disjointed expectations. And finally, research states that if adoptive parents who can readjust or better align their expectations have a greater likelihood to experience positive adoption outcomes. Now, basically, all this research is saying is that child welfare and the child welfare community needs to really have some conversation about managing parent expectations, especially with this impact on placement stability. Now, a little bit about my project in regard to intervention and methodology. Based on my literature review and experience as an adoption supervisor, I developed and facilitated a trauma-informed two-part training for permanency staff. I developed and trained permanency staff on the 5-module MARFPE coaching model to pilot with adoptive resource and foster parents. I created an anonymous online retrospective post-training survey for permanency staff to assess their knowledge and comfort in talking to and coaching parents on what it takes to parent children who have experienced the child welfare system. I created an anonymous pre-coaching survey of adoptive resource and foster parent perceptions of family stability, beliefs, attitudes, and expectations. And I created a retrospective feedback survey to be completed by adoptive, resource, and foster families to assess changes in their perception of family stability, beliefs, attitudes, and expectations following the coaching. The length of the training was 8 hours, but I split it into 2 days, having each training day be about 4 hours a day. The first part, or day 1 of the training, consisted of trauma, child development, attachment styles, and placement discontinuity. The second part consisted of managing expectations, courageous conversations, and the MARFPE coaching model. Both training sessions consisted of Newport News DHS permanency staff, with there being 1 post-adoption worker, 2 senior adoption workers, and 2 research home case managers. The trainings were held at Newport News DHS and virtually for those who may have missed 1 session or both training sessions. Now, due to time constraints, the permanency staff retrospective feedback survey results didn't make it into this PowerPoint presentation. However, I did want to share some of what was stated. When asked the question, overall, how would you rate the permanency staff training? On a scale from excellent to poor, all participants responded excellent. Additionally, on a scale of strongly agree to strongly disagree, all participants answered strongly agree to the following statements. I was satisfied with this training course. The training enhanced my knowledge of placement discontinuity. The training enhanced my knowledge of how to help adoptive resource and foster parents manage unrealistic expectations of the youth in their home. As a result of this training, I am comfortable talking to adoptive resource and foster parents about how important it is for them to manage their unrealistic expectations when parenting children who have experienced the child welfare system. In regard to the coaching model itself, the MARFPE coaching model was adapted from Whitmore's GROW model and includes elements of the Virginia Department of Social Services Family Services practice principles. The MARFPE coaching model utilizes a child development timeline, with each module exploring typical child development and development when impacted by trauma. Each module provides opportunities for learning, skill building, problem solving, self-reflection, and modeling. And as I stated, there are 5 modules designed for the developmental ages of 0 to 12 months, 12 to 5 years, 5 to 9 years, 9 to 12 years, and 12 to 18 years. Each module takes about an hour to complete and can be combined if deemed appropriate. Each module also contains parent expectations that is discussed during each coaching session. I utilize expectations that have come up in conversations with staff, peers, and parents, and attempted to put them in the age ranges where they fit most appropriately. It should also be noted that all of the VDSS practice principles can apply across age ranges. However, I felt that applying all 11 practice principles in each coaching session would be exhausting. It was my vision to utilize parent expectations and VDSS principles that may present themselves at various ages. The parent coaching program itself seeks to provide adoptive, resource, and foster parents with a model that gives insights into the impact of the child welfare system on children at varying developmental stages, explores the significance of managing one's expectations, and examines the potential impact of unrealistic expectations on placement stability. In regard to the MARFPE coaches, as I stated, the Newport News DHS permanency staff are those who've been trained to pilot the MARFPE coaching model. These coaches facilitate learning through asking questions and engaging in active listening, reflection, and discussion. They also encourage self-directive change, create awareness of opportunities, and will provide constructive feedback through observation that will support adoptive resource and foster parent skill development and placement stability. On this slide, you can see how the modules have been broken down. You see the first 3 on this slide, with Module 1 discussing the age range of 0 to 12 months, the VDSS practice principles of advocating, assessing, and collaborating, and the parent expectation of attachment. Module 2 focuses on the age ranges of 12 months to 3 years and 3 years to 5 years, with the VDSS practice principles of communicating and documenting, and the parent expectation of typical child development. As you can see, Module 3, same format, ages 5 to 7 years and 7 to 9 years, with the parent expectation being affection. Module 4, age range 9 to 12 years, with that VDSS practice principle reflecting demonstrating cultural diversity and competence, and the parent expectation of sameness and similarity. And finally, Module 5 talks about the age range of 12 to 18 years, with the parent expectation of gratitude and birth family connections. I thought that this expectation was very important to include in this module, given that gratitude as well as birth family connections can be a point of contention between foster parents and youth in this age range. Now, delivery of the MARFPE coaching model. As I stated, permanency staff will serve as MARFPE coaches, with the modules including prompts for discussion regarding managing parent expectations, the incorporation of VDSS practice principles to guide discussion and provoke thought, and review and discussion of child development and trauma, and the Child Development and Trauma Guide. It should be noted that foster parent, adoptive, and resource parent coaching hasn't begun yet. However, we did have 3 foster parents through NNDHS express interest. So I do look forward to sharing those results once they've engaged in the coaching program. Now, what have been some of my challenges and limitations? Firstly, permanency staff participation was voluntary. Although it was voluntary, luckily, the people that I wanted to participate actually volunteered to do so. So that worked out wonderfully. Secondly, the number of permanency staff who participated in the training was limited. As I stated, there were 5 staff who did participate in the training. Thirdly, adoptive, resource, and foster parent participation was also voluntary. And finally, state data related to race and adoption disillusion was unavailable. Now, what lessons were learned during this process? I found it wonderful that staff were excited to learn about ways to improve their practice with the adoptive, resource, and foster families with whom they engage and to support placement stability. During this time, I also learned that creating a permanency staff training and parent coaching model is indeed challenging. Thirdly, the IRB process can be rigorous and time-consuming. And finally, managing parent expectations plays an important part in placement stability and is something that we absolutely need to be talking about in this child welfare space. Now, what are my next steps? Firstly, I plan to share the results of my ARP with my agency. Secondly, I want to provide training to more staff under the permanency umbrella and expand the training to other departments like CHIN, CPS, and in-home services. Finally, I look to engage adoptive, resource, and foster parents in the MARFPE coaching program to support placement stability. Now, what has been the MPLD impact? Personally, it reignited my passion for child welfare and permanency. It reminded me of my power and expanded my expertise. It also gave me the courage to be more vulnerable and to impact change. Professionally, it helped me recognize the expansive role that I can play in my agency. It provided the opportunity for me to be more vocal in my current position, and it instilled hope that change is possible. Now, as I show you my references, I do want to close out by acknowledging the Virginia Department of Social Services for their support, and specifically the IRB for their review and exemption of my project. I want to thank the Newport News Department of Human Services for their support and advocacy, and a special thanks to the permanency staff and Newport News DHS foster, resource, and adoptive parents who volunteered to participate in this project. I also want to thank my mentor, Rhonda Williams, for her encouragement, continuous support, and advocacy in all of my endeavors. And finally, I want to say thank you, thank you, thank you to the MPLD Fellowship Superstars. You have managed to reignite my passion for the important work that I do and have assisted me in realizing the power that I hold in this child welfare space. Thank you.